60 million records sold. I think it is now. 7 Grammys, is that right, under your belt?
Oh, yeah.
That's incredible.
2 of them in the last couple of years.
I know.
And at 70 to still be earning Grammys, I am very proud of that.
They're still coming in.
Very blessed, yeah.
You're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's an absolute honour. Stewart Copeland is with us on Gold. Thank you for coming in.
Well, my pleasure.
It must be great to be back in London. This is where it all began.
Yes, it is. I was a teenager on these streets, and don't let my accent fool you. I'm a London boy. In fact, I grew up in the Wood, you know.
Yeah, you did.
St. John's Wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your first band was over here. Is that right?
That's right. Well, yeah, Curved Air was my first pro band. I played in college bands and such, but my first pro band was Curved Air, and then my second pro band was The Police.
I mean, we played a completely different time.
400 yards away from here, we played in a punk rock club called the Roxy.
Oh, the Roxy. Well, it's famous, the Roxy.
It's not there anymore, but it's famous.
Yeah. Well, the reputation.
Yeah. It was a wild club.
Yeah. I mean, in different fashion with the big boots and the
we've done the Roxy,
the long hair.
Yeah, and the Marquee, which is not there anymore.
Oh,
the 100 Club, which is I don't know if that's still there on Oxford Street.
Did you meet many other bands? Did you get to hang out with any big names when you were playing these gigs?
Oh well, they were all sniveling nobodies at the time, as we all were.
Yeah.
The Jam, the Clash, the Damned. Never saw the Sex Pistols. That's one of those, because they only played 3 gigs or something like that. Yeah. Nobody saw the Sex Pistols, but everybody has, they were probably seen by 20 people, but bragged on by 5,000 people.
Was this before or after you were, because I heard that you were a roadie for a while as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I've done it all in show business.
But that's how it all
started. I've been a roadie,
started.
tour manager, radio jock, in fact.
Oh, is that right?
Journalist, drummer, guitarist, even singer. A few years ago, I did a tour in front of the band at the front of the stage, singing and playing guitar. Of course, I had Mark King playing real bass and Adrian Belew playing real guitar. And I was just at the front. You can do anything, just hitting E chords and stuff. That was a fun deal.
I love hearing you talk about music because you're so passionate about music, and I wonder whether there's one artist or band that you heard when you were younger that set you along that path.
Oh, that would be Jimi Hendrix.
It was Jimi Hendrix.
Absolutely Jimi
Because
Hendrix.
I know you were a big fan of his drummer.
Yeah, Mitch Mitchell, and it's one of those strange things that Mitch Mitchell, who should be at the apex of all drumming, is sort of forgotten because Jimi Hendrix was so big and bad. And people remember the Jimi Hendrix experience, and he was so incredible, they hardly noticed that sitting right behind him was this incredible, legendary drummer who changed a lot of stuff.
Did you ever get to meet any of these guys?
No, I met Ginger.
You did?
Crusty, beware Mr. Baker, crusty old dude. But we got along pretty well, actually. Yeah. I met him on the side of a polo field. And he called me,
all places.
Hey, young man, he'd called me. And Ginger can call me whatever. He can call me hey you or look here or even a finger to the shoulder, and I'd be honored.
But you're a bit of a rock star, you see. But I wonder how were you starstruck when you met him?
Well, he probably treated me nicer than most people. We got along fine. In fact, I probably got the last recording of Ginger Baker. He came to my studio and banged on my drums, and we jammed for a bit. I got 1 minute, which is on my YouTube channel.
Oh. Wow.
And while he was there, he had a fit, and the ambulance was called.
Yeah.
And the medics are saying, "Well, we're gonna have to take you down to the hospital." He's saying, "No, back off now! I get out of here, And I used to be able to do a London accent, but now 20 years in California,
that's pretty close.
I'm more like Dick Van Dyke now. So I'm gonna leave that out.
That's
leave
how
it out.
Speak.
Yeah.
So rock star till the end.
He was.
Yeah.
Well, grumpy. But imposing.
Yeah.
And I got along fine with him, as no sudden movements.
Can I ask, because obviously, that must be the case for so many bands from this generation and perhaps, generations before that have grown up with your music and then actually get to meet you. Have you met any of those
I wish my
guys
kids
that
were
have
that
been completely starstruck when they've met you?
Well, actually, overtly, the Foo Fighters made Fanboy cool.
Yeah.
Dave and, sadly, our dearly missed Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah.
They both made no bones of the fact that they were total fanboys, and they would gush but it was charming. They're just real people. And the Foo Fighters are a great hang generally anyway, but that bandwidth, that age group of the Rage Against the Machine, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Fish, Primus, that bandwidth, those are my people.
It's funny how the ego just totally drops you there on the spot. And
Beg your pardon?
they're on, for that moment, they're underneath you. You're like a god to them.
Yeah, they're a stadium act, but, well, I go all googly when I meet Ringo.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Starkey, can I, and, sitting next to him at a dinner party, what do you say to a Beatle? Other than, so Ringo, how do you like that Ludwig bass drum pedal? And to my surprise, well, actually, I prefer the Rogers. And we get into a whole discussion. There's little old me talking to a Beatle, Ringo, no less, about bass drum pedals. How cool is that?
But there's a natural hierarchy there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're above me. And the way we figure it out, it's very simple amongst musicians. And I'm not sure if this works for actors and other celebs too, but with musicians, it's really simple. It's not how many records you sold. It's not how many tickets you sold. It's simply a matter of chronology. Who was first? The bass player in the Pretty Things outranks me because he came before me. But Puffy, Kanye is, has to look up to me. He
Absolutely
has to bounce
right.
great for me. I don't care how many records he sold. It's just, it keeps it simple.
Sales are nothing to do with
we're
it.
like dogs. Dogs, they sniff each other's butt and they, figure it out. But as soon as they figured out the hierarchy, you're the top dog, I'm the middle dog, he's the little, the baby dog. As soon as they're all sorted out, everybody's happy. They all get along just fine. And so that's how musicians get along just fine. I'm above Puffy. I'm below Ringo. We're all cool with that.
But on first name, terms, which is great. So it must have been, going back to the Police, it must have been around the punk era that the Police were born.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exciting.
The streets
time
of
for
London.
You came up with a name.
Yeah. I had a manifesto, the whole deal.
Yeah.
And when I called Sting up in Newcastle, I told, I got a band. We're called the Police. I got material. We got gigs. It's all going on. And my certitude was convincing enough. Actually, what convinced him was the do-it-yourself thing. The story is that a journalist up in Newcastle, when I was in Curved Air, took us to see the local hot band, Last Exit, featuring a bass player who could sing and play bass and had handsome-looking amp there. Cool. That's useful. But there was also one other factor, which was this unmistakable, from the heavens, shaft of celestial light, lighting up this guy with charisma out to here. And we were introduced, and, you can't say that Sting made, that success swelled his head or anything. He was the Lion King from birth. He just had that
because he
charisma.
comes across as being quite shy.
Well, he is shy,
Yeah.
and people sometimes mistake it for arrogance or standoffish. He's not arrogant at all. In fact, quite self-deprecating. But we met, and I remembered he can sing and play bass, and he has an amp. Those are the three things you need in a bass player. There's that golden shaft of light too. That's cool. So I called him from London and said, I got this band. And first thing I said was that, by the way, this is a conversation about you, not your band. And those fateful words were, keep talking. Right there, I knew that A, he was a free agent and he was available and open to suggestion. And keep talking, that's what I had to do a lot of for the next couple of years, keeping him in the band. We didn't have Roxanne. We didn't have Message in a Bottle. We didn't have any of those songs yet.
Success. Some people think it was an overnight success, but there was a lot of hard work going on.
We starved for a year and a half.
Yeah. And I've heard stories of you guys, sliding the vinyl into sleeves and selling records out of boxes,
Well, yeah,
I
discovered, because I was a do-it-yourself, I borrowed 400 quid from a friend. We went up to Pathway Studios in Islington, and I took the pressings to the factory, RCA, to print the records, and I had the sleeves printed over here, and I learned that you're supposed to deliver the sleeves to the factory so that they will put the records in the picture sleeves. I didn't get that right. So the first 2,000 singles were in their white sleeves, and Sting, Henry Padovani, and I had to sit there and pull each disc out of there and put it out of the white sleeve, put it into the picture disc.
And at the same time, you're trying to convince this guy to stay in the band.
That's right. Well, he had everybody whispering in his ear, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But one miracle is that he heard my demo tapes, which I've got them. They're pretty crap. And he heard those tapes and didn't run away. That's one miracle. But the even bigger miracle is when we ran into Andy Summers. Sting and I actually were really tight rhythm section in demand even. You know, we did a lot of work together as just this hot rhythm section. And one of the sessions we did, the guitarist walks in, who's like a triple scale, super legendary guitarist in London who, you know, he probably cost more than Sting and I put together. Name of Andy Summers. And we spent a day making really great kind of prog music, which we didn't allow ourselves in the Police because we were technically a punk band. And so we didn't allow that kind of musical exploration. But driving home that night, we're, you know, while we're playing, we're giving each other side eye. Man, that guy's good. And as we're driving home, Sting goes, "We got to get that guy in the band." I go, "Come on, I could indulge his fantasy because I knew it was never going to happen. We can't afford that guy. Are you kidding?" You know, but. And so we did a show with this, you know, we sort of had further interactions while we're all like conniving. How can we get this guy in our band? And one day I ran into him on the Oxford Circus tube station. He pulls me into a cafe and says, "You and that bass player, you got something, but you need me in the band," and I accept. Now, he does hate it when I tell that story, and I'm sorry, Andy.
Why, though?
Because that's who Andy is. He's absolutely direct, to the point, no beating around the bush, but I could not believe my ears.
Yeah.
I couldn't, you know, we've been conniving as to how to get Andy in the band. Now we had to figure out how to get Henry out of the band. But I had to kick the wheels.
Yeah.
And, you know, Andy, I'm very honored and flattered. Sting's going to be real happy, but you know, we haven't got a record company. The record company is me. It's a pretend record company with me with my Letra set. That's the record.
Yeah.
Illegal Records. That's the record company. We haven't got management. The management, well, that's me. Using my brother Miles's Rolodex and so on, but I'm the management. Roadies, that's you. Carrying your own damned amplifier. And
but does that make you I mean, looking back now, and the level at which you got to, I mean, eventually playing sold-out stadium gigs. Does that, you think?
Eventually.
But yeah, it was a big climb up there. But do you think that makes you appreciate it more?
Yes, overnight sensations somehow seem to burn out sooner and enjoy it all less. We had enough time, because I had it previously with Curved Air. I had some success. My name had been in print, and I had some recognition, and I'd played big places, and I had some of the vibe of what it's like to be in a successful band. Even though, in that case, with Curved Air, I was the last rat to jump aboard the sinking ship. Their hits had been 10 years previous to me joining them.
Yeah.
But still, I'd had a taste.
Yeah.
And then gone down again. And so when it started to come up again, I had been up and down, and the old adage, the people you abuse on the way up, you will meet up on the way down. And so having learned that, I was a little bit better armed. Of course, Andy had been around the block. And actually, it was Sting for whom it was all real new. The first time we were on Top of the Pops was actually with Andy and Sting as my backing band for Clark Kent, which is another whole story.
Masks, though.
Oh, yeah.
You were wearing masks.
Yes.
I think that performance exists out there on YouTube.
Oh, it is.
Somewhere.
It's on YouTube. With Tony Blackburn was the DJ.
I mean, imagine playing.
Who was an old schoolmate of mine, by the way.
Shows. Tony Blackburn was an old school friend of yours.
Not school friend. He attended the same school, Millfield School in Somerset.
Is that right?
Before I was there. And when I was at Millfield, he was a big boss jock on the radio.
And then he ended up playing your records.
And then he ended up playing the record. But the Clark Kent had a secret identity. I played all the instruments, the guitar, bass, drum, even the singing. Now, I never sang in the shower. I never sang in the car. I never even listened to vocals. I'm listening to the riff and the drums. And if I'm interacting with music, I'm pounding the steering wheel with my hands. But there I am singing this song, which the BBC, Her Majesty the BBC, picked this up and put it on the radio on playlist equals a hit. So they get me on Top of the Pops, but I don't want to be one solo guy standing there, even if I did play all the instruments. I like being a part of a band. So I called up Andy and Sting and another buddy of mine, my predecessor drummer on Curved Air, Florian Pilkington Mixa, oldie Tonian. And we played the song. So the first time the Three Blonde Heads were on national TV, they were in gorilla masks, and there's old Stingo miming to my bass line. It's very hard to drag that brag out of me. You know, that somehow does come up in conversation.
Please go and search that out if you haven't seen it on YouTube. It is out there. It is out there. It's the 40th anniversary of Every Breath You Take this year. Where's that time gone?
Into 7 children.
Yeah.
5 grandchildren, and now 4 grand puppies.
Puppies, really?
Yeah.
They take up your time.
Oh, I love the puppies. Well, actually, most of them are dogs. We just got a new grand puppy.
And strolls along the beach in LA.
The old adage among us old duffers is, if I'd known how much fun the grandchildren were going to be, I'd have had them first.
Well, it's not the easy part, but it's certainly easier.
Oh, I love grandchildren. You pour candy down them, you bribe them, you keep them up late, you play with them, and then hand them over.
Exactly none of the responsibility.
Yeah.
But, going back to that song, where does that take you back to in your life?
I try not to go back to the origins of the song, which were deeply painful on Montserrat, where we had the knives in each other's throats. We're all, we all get it now.
Things are okay now.
Yeah, the hatchet is well done. We're all good about it, and we're all very appreciative of what the conflict produced.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been like that if we hadn't been at each other's throats. And the conflict was because each of the 3 of us cared deeply about what we were doing. If we were apathetic, if we were passengers, there wouldn't have been that conflict.
Yep.
But all 3 of us had an opinion, which made it quite difficult. But we got through it and are very pleased with the result.
Yeah, that's great. I don't think many bands work that way anymore.
Well, I know lots of, like the Foo Fighters, they get along great.
Yeah.
They hang out.
Yeah.
They'll call each other, hey, what are you doing? Let's get
agreeable.
A movie. Oh, they're so agreeable. But they run a tight ship. Dave is the hardest working man in show business. He is really, with the loss of James Brown, Dave is now the hardest working man in show business. That show that the Foos did in London at Wembley, the tribute show, 5 hours that did not stop. That's all Dave. I mean, he called up all those artists. He figured out the material because he mixed, half of this band, half of that band, put them together. What song should they play? He figured all that out.
Yeah.
He ran all the rehearsals. He curated all the material. And then for 5 hours on stage, fronted it all, either singing or drumming or bass playing or guitar playing. He was on stage for 5 hours and did not flag for a second.
But
that was one of the most emotional, powerful shows I've ever been involved with.
So what gave you the idea then to take these songs that are, these great Police songs that are so close to people's hearts? And, they're the kind of songs that you can hear on the radio. They instantly take you back to a moment in your life. What gave you the idea to do what you've done and come up with this project, the Deranged Project?
Well, exactly what you said, which is they have this place in people's hearts. Music and memory are very closely attached. And the memories are very powerful associated with that song. Well, even if you weren't a fan of the song or the band, you heard it on the radio, whether you liked it or not. You fell in love to it. You fell out of love. You got hired, fired, divorced, married. You lived your life with these songs. And so they have a real emotional impact. So when I play them with a big orchestra on stage, these versions of them where you'll recognize the main bits, the hooks, if you like, the choruses, although I do play hide the hits sometimes. But so there's this other material around the familiar parts of the song, the orchestral stuff. But it's all very Police-ish because it derives from improvisations that the band did on stage or excursions in the studio that never made it on the record. So it's all Police-ish, but stuff you haven't heard before. But it still comes from that same Police-ish place. So I've played this show about 25, 30 times by now. And it always burns down the house. It's really a safe bet that I'm so happy to be playing the show in London tomorrow night. I'm so happy to walk out in front of my hometown with this show. I cannot wait.
It must be so fun watching the audience reaction.
Oh, yeah. It's emotional because the people, also when we did our reunion tour, we could see how emotionally overwhelmed people were. Okay, they were 15 back in the day. They're 35 now, but still even more beautiful because they've had life experience and the songs mean so much to people. That's very moving. That's why we do stuff on stage, is to move people.
And for you personally as the drummer, what's the difference between performing in that situation compared to being on stage with, you played the reunion tour a few years back now, but how different is it?
Just for one thing, I don't have the bass player turning around and telling me whether to play the hi-hat or the ride cymbal.
Okay. So you're the boss.
When we did the reunion tour, and we get into our first rehearsals, And Sting goes, what is that racket going on behind my left shoulder? Hello? I'm trying to sing a song here. And I'm banging stuff as I do, as I've always done. And the bass player turns around and has an opinion. I haven't had a bass player talk back to me in 30 years. And now this guy's like telling me to play my hi-hat. And here's why I had to kill him. Because he does know a thing or two about bands and arranging, and he's a pretty talented, gifted musician, old Stingo. And when he would turn around with an idea that was actually a pretty good idea, that's when I must murder him now.
I would go mad.
Yeah.
It'd be enough to drive you crazy.
Yeah.
So there's an album out as well, The Police Deranged for Orchestra, 23rd of June, along with, I just must quickly talk about this, your diaries, which you're sharing as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, those hungry years when we began, 76, 77, 78, 79, was the fun part. Not the fun part, it was the miserable part, but the interesting part of the story, the struggle part when we were starving. And the miracle is that we stuck together without those big songs, but we knew that we were in the right musical company. Andy, man, that's the guitarist I want to play with. Stingo, he just had it every which way. He could play bass and sing and had an amp. These were the guys we wanted to play with. But we didn't have any material yet. We just had my dumb songs, which were just, place fillers so that we could play punk clubs. And, I used my scant knowledge of the instrument to concoct these idiotic songs with yelling, basically. And I think Sting's first song was a retread from his jazz band that he brought in, but the lyrics had some meaningful lyrics. So we changed that. No, that's too prog. No, let's change the name of the song to 3 O'Clock Shit. And so we would play the song at 100 miles, 3 times the speed that whatever he had played it in his previous band. And he would just mumble the lyrics so that nobody would know he was deep.
Yeah. Just before I let you go, is there one moment from those years that perhaps is in the diary? One moment that you're particularly proud of and that you think, God, I'm so glad that happened. I'm so glad I did that. I got to do that.
Well, there were some big points. I think I might have mentioned running into Andy at Oxford Circus where he demanded to join the group.
Yeah.
That was a good day.
Yeah.
There was a time I called up Sting in Newcastle and said, okay, I'll come down to London. Okay, the big one was when he arrived in London, unbeknownst, just out of the blue, the phone rings, Sting on the phone saying, with that gravelly voice that we all know so well.
Yeah.
I'm downstairs. Well, come on up. And he came up, and I was in a squat in Mayfair at the time. A 2-story fancy apartment. Long story, what I was doing there, but we were in there. And we had one of the rooms, the equipment set up, drums and everything. I had a bass. I put it into his hands and sat on the drums. And we set the building on fire. And just that afternoon, when we were just discovering each other, thinking, this guy's a complete stranger, but we are completely in the pocket. That was the big moment when Sting and I first played together and just jammed through the afternoon, just coming up with stuff, scaling the mountains, digging deep in, it was just a fantastic afternoon. And that's why we stuck together, is because as a rhythm section, we rocked.